Today's Patreon shoutout is for Ye Old Knight. Beirut versus Meren. And I know that if I ship that back, I'm not going to get into any ramp and maybe even any lands, so we've got a very slow commander there, but Swiftfoot Boots could make it good. See a tap land that comes in with a plant token from our opponent. Draw into Garrick, that will be some creature card advantage for us, just get out the Swiftfoot Boots here I think. Our opponent ramps with the Golgari Signet, so they have their colours fixed now. And that's a pretty good top deck. Garrick's Uprising will draw us a card every time we play a 4-power creature. Sakura Tribe Elder from the Meren player is one of the best cards in that deck. And drawing into our first Worm, I think we just have to risk getting out the Beirut here. Haven't drawn into a 4th land annoyingly. Our opponent plays out their commander as well and sacrifices the Sakura Tribe Elder, getting their first experience counter. Then at the end of the turn, the Steve goes back into their hand. A cheap 2-mana Worm, but no land still. So we'll just play out that 2-mana Worm. It still gets a buff from our commander, even though there's nothing in our graveyard. Swiftfoot Boots onto our commander, and then we'll enchant it with Instill Energy as well, so that we can untap it when we do finally get to start making worms with it. The Swiftfoot Boots coming into play already. They point the Infernal Grasp at our creature, and then replaying the Steve again. Cracking the Steve gets them another basic, and now they get into Fauna Shaman, which can start tutoring creatures out for them, unfortunately. 3 cards in hand, so they might not have a creature in play to activate that. Deciding to swing in at us with the Meren, so obviously just taking the damage there because we don't want to lose our commander. Sakura Tribe Elder straight back into play now that they've got 2 experience counters at the end of the turn. Now drawing into a land. And we're just going way too slow on the Worms front here, so I think we have to try and protect ourselves against Edict effects. Let's sacrifice our commander counterintuitively. And yeah, we've wasted that aura unfortunately, but let's sacrifice it to natural order and we can tutor up a green creature card, put that straight into play. Impervious Great Worm is one target, that's indestructible, but we still lose to Edict effects with that. So I think Worldspine Worm is the one to go for there. We'll still end up with worms in play once that gets taken out, and it will trigger the enchantment as well, hopefully drawing us into more mana. The tokens that enter will trigger this thing as well. Into another worm, so we'll put the Swiftfoot Boots onto the Elder Scale Worm. And we'll swing in at our opponent for 15 damage. Double blocking with the Sakura Tribe Elder and the plant. Then sacrificing the Sakura Tribe Elder in response. And that does have trample, so we get them down to 25. Meren swinging straight in during their turn. And ominously, just passing through to the end step, 3 cards in hand, and reanimating the Sakura Tribe Elder again with 4 XP counters. We draw into Ancient Tomb, which is a bit of ramp for us. Swing in with the huge worm again, and sacrificing the Steve in response. Getting them down to 10, this giant worm might do it for us. So now we can go for Garrick, Caller of Beasts. And I think ticking down the Garrick would be a good idea, put a green creature from our hand onto the battlefield, so getting down the Penumbra Worm is even more Wrath protection. We'll end up with a bunch of worm tokens in play once those creatures go down. Triggers the Garrick's Uprising as well. Draws us into a land. We've already made a land this turn. Oh good, we see Spore Frog from the Meren player. Holding those 3 cards in hand, they haven't been tutoring with the Fauna Shaman, so I'm assuming that they don't have any creatures in hand. Spore Frog would have been something that they tutored up way before now, I would have thought. Reanimating the Steve again, and again we draw into a forest, so let's tick up our Planeswalker. Seen the back of a Return of the Wildspeaker there unfortunately, but Seedborn Muse is really good. See a Voracious Worm as well, which is a cheap worm for us. So definitely want to get down the Seedborn Muse. Play the Voracious Worm as well. All of our big stuff has trample thanks to the Garrick's Uprising, so I think we're definitely swinging in here. They have trample printed on them anyway. Force them to use this Spore Frog. Sacrificing Spore Frog in response to the attacks. They can only reanimate 1 card a turn with the Meren, so like I said, we'll force them to use the Spore Frog. No damage dealt there, of course. We'll see how long they can drag this game out for. Once again, just passing straight through the turn after dropping a land, so I'm not sure if they're just top decking lands off the top. Reanimate the Spore Frog. We draw into Heroic Intervention, so let's plus on the Garrick again and continue to get card advantage. Seeing a Realm Walker, which is potentially even more card advantage for us. Quirion Ranger could abuse our commander as well by untapping it. So let's get our commander into play. Then give that haste with the Swiftfoot Boots. And it's only going to be 1 mana to activate it thanks to our big creatures, so we'll get a 1 mana 4/4 Worm, which is actually a 6/6 with trample thanks to the buff. Triggers the Garrick's Uprising, drawing us a card, more haste with the Lightning Greaves. And then we'll go into the red zone again, just go in with the Worldspine Worm. And as you would expect, they crack the Fog Frog. Meren managing to get into something here. Awakening Zone isn't going to do them much good, I wouldn't have thought. They're already at 8 experience counters. So Meren pointed at Fog Frog, as you would expect. In response, all our things were untapped with the Seedball Muse at the beginning of the turn. We will make another Worm token with our commander, which will cantrip. And there we see Impervious Great Worm, which is a big indestructible. Draw into a land for the turn, throw that out straight away, tick up the Garrick once again maybe. Let's get out the Quirion Ranger first. Then we can make another worm with our commander. A 6/6 with trample, cantrips us again. Defiler of Vigour is really good. So yeah, I think we do tick up on the Garrick now. Seeing Elfheim Worm and Bellowing Tangleworm gives Intimidate, so not the best thing against a green player. Let's throw out the Defiler of Vigour and show off just how good this thing is. Haven't seen anyone else play it yet, but it is really good. Cantrips us again thanks to the enchantment, and that is Wormcoil Engine. And I think we're fine to go for Realm Walker here, so a plus counter on all of our stuff thanks to the Defiler. And Realm Walker does get the buff because it enters as a worm, which draws us into another worm ironically, and there is yet another worm on top of our library. Continue to swing in with the Worldspine Worm, and we know what happens here. We have too many cards in hand here, so just discard the Elfheim Worm. That's just Vigilance and Trample, nothing too special about it. Awakening Zone triggering during our opponent's turn will make an Elf spawn, or an Eldrazi spawn even I should say. Throwing out a Scryland. During their main phase they've passed priority, so we'll activate our commander again. Once again, thanks to the Seedball Muse, everything is untapped. And we reveal a land on top of our library now. And you'll never guess who Meren's reanimating. Draw into the land, revealing Great Henge on top. Play the land. And not going to activate the Garrick because I do want to draw into that Great Henge, I think. So just play the Fallow Worm here, I think. That will put a plus counter on all of our stuff. It only costs 3 mana for that Fallow Worm, which is why I'm playing it here, just using it to get into the Great Henge. The Fallow Worm is sacrificed straight away because we can't discard a land that we don't have in hand. Draw into the Great Henge. That is only 2 mana, and once again buffing all our stuff with plus counters. You can see how much work the Defiler does. Seeing Vernal Bloom on top now as well, so tap down the Great Henge and make another worm token, which will draw us into the Vernal Bloom. Okay, the Magerite Stone is pretty good. That's even more untapped shenanigans for our commander, so let's tick down the Garrick and draw into it with getting down the Impervious Great Worm. Probably a good idea to have an Indestructible in play as well. We actually draw 2 cards now thanks to the Great Henge and the enchantment. So drawing into the Magerite Stone, we'll play it here. Then untap our commander with the Magerite Stone. Tap it down again, making another token. And that draws us into Chord of Calling. We've got lots of green creatures that we can convoke with, so that's really good. Masked Vandal could be useful. So let's activate the Quirion Ranger, untap our commander again, we'll bounce a land back to hand. Activate that again. That draws us into the Vandal, and then we've got extra planar lens on top, getting some good stuff on top of our library. Once again, go into the red zone, force them to crack the frog. And then just pass it through to the end step there, I think. We'll get rid of some lands. Bellowing Tangleworm I don't think is going to be much use to us against a green player. Get rid of the other worm as well. Finally, our opponents managed to draw into a creature, so discarding it with the Fauna Shaman. That was a Deathrite Shaman that they discarded. May well see the game turn around here. And that is the card they tutored for, so DC Undead Vizier will be able to tutor something else out for them. So maybe a Damnation or something. Obviously we have Heroic Intervention held up with the rest of our mana. Sacrificing the Sidisi to itself, and then playing a Decree of Pain. Alright, so we know that those 3 cards in their hand aren't particularly good, because they've been stuck with those 3 cards in hand this whole time. They're not going to get anywhere near as much card draw here as they would like, thanks to our Heroic Intervention though. Otherwise that would have been a hell of a card for them to play here. And I'm hoping that we don't see Meren hit play again here, because that means that we still have Sporefrog to deal with if we do. Meren is still in the bin. Animate Dead coming down pointed at that. So in response we'll go for another worm. Draw into our double mana in Extra Planar Lens. Untap our commander again with the stone. Tap it down again, draws us into Beast Within. So Beast Within, obviously a really good top deck for us. One of the few ways that we would actually be able to deal with the Sporefrog shenanigans here. I will point the Beast Within at instant speed at the Animate Dead and not give them chance to reanimate the Sporefrog with their commander. Totally tapped out here with only 4 cards in hand, so I don't imagine there's anything they can do about this. Yep, successfully managing to blow up their commander. It goes back into the command zone. Our opponent says good game, so is a good sport about it. And we just leave them with a beast token in play, ready to swing in for lethal next turn. So it wasn't looking too hopeful for us there against the Sporefrog shenanigans. Yeah, like I said, if we couldn't get rid of their Meren in time to get rid of the Sporefrog stuff, then I don't see what else a creature-based deck can do. Yeah, but luckily, anyway, we did manage to get rid of the Meren, so hopefully you all enjoyed that one. Be sure to leave it a thumbs up if you did. That's the best way to support the channel for free, because it pushes the videos out to other potential viewers. If you want to support monetarily, then you can do that as well via Patreon. A huge thank you to the patrons who have supported for many years at this point. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.